Good morning, Conversational Chaos fans. This is the Rage Monster here in the studio with Jason this morning. Welcome back to another edition of the Intelligent Ramblings between Jason and the Rage Monster. We have a different topic for you today, something we've actually thought about ahead of time. Jason, you want to bring us up to speed on what that is?
I have something first, though.
Ooh, something first?
Yeah.
I see it. This part I don't know.
You don't know this one. Well, no, I told you.
Uh-oh.
So
okay.
I have these, I don't know what to call these. I've been trying to think for a while. That's why I haven't done it yet. But like a recurring topic.
Yes.
Kind of thing. So like a shoebox item, or I don't know what to call it. That's why we haven't done it. So if someone has some brilliant idea after they hear maybe a couple of them, maybe they'll give it some feedback. But anyways, I have a trivia question for you today.
Uh-oh.
A single trivia question.
Okay. This isn't the knowledge norms questions, is it?
No.
Good.
This is something different. This
Okay.
was neat. I stumbled upon this the other day. So I was looking through Reddit, and I subscribed to Data is Beautiful subreddit.
That does not surprise me in the least. Data is beautiful.
They take different data sets and show them in neat and interesting ways.
Okay.
All right. So here's the question for you.
Okay.
All right. The title of this graph is the highest grossing media franchises. I'll give you the bottom two so you can have an idea of what a media franchise is, although you probably already know.
Okay.
Like Dragon Ball is a media franchise.
Okay.
Do you know what Dragon Ball is?
Yes.
Okay, good. So now we're on the right track here.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to ask you what like the highest ones are, or see if you can name them. But before you do that, I'm going to give you what was taken into account.
Okay.
So it's music. So this is all sales.
Okay.
Sales of money. Music, TV revenue, card games, comics, video games, books, home video, box office, movie theater, merchandise, or other. Okay.
Okay.
Good so far? All right. So let's see. What do you think would be the highest grossing media franchise? And this data came from a user. I should mention what it is. Take a second.
Take a second?
Yeah, he got the data from Wikipedia.
Reddit user, take a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So, can I just guess ones that might be in the top 5, or do I have to tell you what number 1 is?
Just guess a big one and see if it's even in the list.
Batman.
Batman is on the list.
Of course it's on the list.
I'm going to give you what ranking do you think it is?
3.
14.
Dang.
14. You need to try harder.
Okay, Lord of the Rings movie franchise.
Not on the list.
That's a surprise, because they sold millions of those books.
Yeah, but they were cheap though back then.
What about Spider-Man?
Spider-Man is on there. He is. These aren't numbered, so I have to count from the top. I should have written this out first. 1, 2, 3, 12. So you're getting up
okay,
higher.
I'm getting closer.
Spider-Man is more than Batman.
What about the the Avengers?
So that would be the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Yes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's treated differently than rest of Marvel, apparently, because Spider-Man is part of Marvel.
Yeah, but he was an entirely separate
It's a different
thing.
studio and him.
Yeah, it's just an entirely separate thing.
10th. So you've broken the top 10.
Oh, gosh. Jeez, Jason. I don't even know.
I would have guessed maybe one of these top 10.
Okay. Does that include the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
No, they wouldn't have been in my top 10.
Okay, so this includes card games, everything merchandisable, including music.
Right. I know you have heard of...
How about Expendables universe?
That?
Oh, Fast and the Furious.
No.
Dang it.
They're not even on the list.
Don't really give up, but...
You've heard of at least 8 of the 10.
I'm sure I've heard of them, but I'm not especially movie franchises.
All right, so we'll start at the bottom. It's number 16.
Okay.
It's Barbie.
Barbie?
$24 billion.
As in, the doll?
The doll, yeah.
I didn't know she had a movie franchise.
Let's see, she has merchandise.
Obviously.
I don't know what this called. Video games.
Definitely.
Comics, home videos, and card games, apparently. All right.
Okay, Barbie.
She's at the bottom now.
Yeah.
$24 billion now. She's been around for a while. Dragon Ball, $24.3 billion. So
okay.
Not much more. Then next was Batman with $26 billion.
It's funny how you say $24 billion and then $24.3 billion. Oh, it's not much more. That's $300 million. You won't make that in your lifetime.
Well, when you see the chart, you'll... All right, next is Gundam, which I think is a Japanese comic.
I have no idea. Never heard of that one.
Spider-Man. Then Harry Potter.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
He's
yeah.
at $30 billion.
Yeah.
Preston 10 more.
Yeah.
Then the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay, that was number 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're breaking 10.
10.
What's inside of that?
Shonen Jump, which I think is a Japanese comic.
No idea.
It's like a Marvel in Japan, I think. Like a bunch of comics rolled into it. It is purely comics. Like there is no movies or anything. It's just comics. It's kind of a feat in itself. Number 9.
Okay.
Mario. Super Mario.
Oh, yeah.
Most of his money is coming from video games. Then the next is Disney Princesses.
I mean, I would have considered the Disney movie franchise, I suppose, but I wouldn't have considered like the princesses sort of their own
That's
thing.
like their main thing.
I guess.
Yeah, that is like the Disney.
They didn't really
franchise.
have, you know, it's really difficult for Disney to market movies about dudes.
Why would it be hard to market that?
Well, think about how many movies they have where like a princess is the center of the film.
Most of them.
Exactly. That's what I'm
They
saying.
have Pixar now.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So how many have a boy as the center? Not very many.
Yeah. They could.
They don't.
Yeah.
Disney.
Right.
People scare me.
That was number 7.
Okay.
Number 6, Pan Man.
I have no idea what that even
No,
is.
that is
Never heard of it.
All right. You'll know the next. So number 5,
Okay, number 5.
Star Wars.
Duh.
Should guess that one.
Yeah.
Star Wars is at $65 billion.
Not as much as I would have thought, but still
Yeah.
quite extensive.
Number 4, Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse and Friends.
Okay.
$70 billion. So it's a good $5 billion jump there. We're getting into big numbers. Okay, top 3 now.
Top 3. Drum roll, please.
This one surprised me. And
Okay.
This is mainly coming from merchandise. Winnie the Pooh.
Really?
$75 billion.
Well, you know, both of my daughters have Winnie the Pooh stuff, and they don't really know who Winnie the Pooh is.
What?
Really? I mean, they do, but
Did you see the Christopher Robin movie?
no.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one.
I think you had mentioned that. You had gone
Did
to
I?
see that in the movie theater, or you watched it at
Watched
home?
it at home.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you went to see it, or you saw it. You said that it was good.
Yeah, I would recommend that one. It has the guy from Star Wars, Obi-Wan, young Obi-Wan.
Oh, he was the same guy from... He wasn't in the Boondock Saints, was he?
I didn't see that one.
His name? Yule McGregor. McGregor says... Ewan, thank you. Ewan, Yule. Yule McGregor. Ewan.
He likes
Ewan
Christmas
McGregor.
movies.
And logs.
All right. So number 2, this is primarily merchandise as well. Hello Kitty.
That does not surprise me. Little girls love Hello Kitty.
Yeah, I like Hello Kitty. I'm okay with it.
Again, not surprising.
And then the number 1 is Pokemon.
Have you noticed how many of those on that list are Japanese in origin?
Yeah.
At least 4 of the top 10 are Japanese.
3, Pokemon. I guess Hello Kitty.
Hello Kitty is Japanese.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%.
But Pokemon is at $93 billion.
93 billion. You know what it is? It's those cards.
Let's see. Merchandise is the number 1. Card games is actually not the biggest part of it, but it's all their other stuff. They do a great job selling everything.
Kids are crazy.
But not
about
as
the
good
Pokemon
as
cards.
They don't sell as much merchandise as Hello Kitty, Winnie the Pooh, or Mickey Mouse, or Pan Man.
I don't even know what that is. I might have to look those ones up. Pan Man. I never even heard of it.
It's an old one from 1973.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, it started in 1973.
Okay, that was very weird.
Yeah.
What, were you just like surfing around Reddit and you found that and you thought it would be
beautiful.
interesting?
I subscribed to it. So it shows up in my feed.
Data is beautiful.
They have some neat stuff on there.
You know, that's entertaining, certainly.
Yeah.
But the Harry Potter one surprised me.
Yeah.
I would have expected that to be higher on the list.
No, they don't do a whole lot. It's just recent.
Well, it's just the amount of books and the movies made a ton of money. I mean, the woman's a billionaire.
Yeah, but didn't make as much as Marvel has.
That's true.
Or Star Wars.
That's true.
Yeah.
But Pokemon and Hello Kitty, I wouldn't have considered Hello Kitty.
But Hello Kitty's on everything. And it has been
I know,
for
but
30
it's just...
years, 50 years.
It's just like merchandising.
Yeah.
Though. That's all it is. I mean, it's not like there's... I mean, I know there's Hello Kitty, like cartoons and books, and my younger daughter loves Hello Kitty, so she'll find like Hello Kitty videos on YouTube and stuff and watch them, and it's just weird. It's all that weird stuff. Okay,
All right.
Can we move on?
Feedback.
Oh, feedback. We got some feedback.
Episode 20.
Okay.
So one of our listeners had mentioned to me that they had a story, too, about their refrigerator at work and how once a week someone would bring in donuts. I don't know if it was a manager or what. I can't remember from the story. But a lot of times they would be like cream-filled or jelly-filled.
Okay. I don't know if I like where this is going.
But they would find out halfway through the morning, this person would go and get a donut, find out, it's pretty empty. Next week, again, they go get a donut. Jelly's pretty empty. So they would talk to their coworkers and find out, most of the donuts seem to be pretty empty. And they ended up finding out there was a person that would go in with a spoon and scoop the jelly out of all the jelly-filled donuts and just eat the jelly part.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That is actually very disturbing. Well, the mere fact that they wouldn't just throw the rest of it away, the mere fact that they would try to hide it, but didn't they think that somebody was going to notice that their jelly donut has no jelly in it?
You'd have to throw away the whole... Imagine, I don't know how many donuts they would do, but I mean, if you're scooping out, that's only like 12 spoonfuls of jelly. I guess if you really like jelly, you should just buy a jar of jelly.
Maybe they liked it sort of infused with the pastry taste. I mean, it does have an odd kind of taste to it.
Yeah, maybe it's all that extra sugar and flour mixed in it.
I was talking to, I got feedback too from a few people, and now I can't remember any of it. It was so weird. Oh, I did post something on Reddit, and I got lambasted for posting it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was looking for a subreddit to post. We did get an email. This is where we got the email from Scotty, listener Scotty.
Yes.
Who had, they were going through the refrigerator in his office. You see, we did get feedback. They were going through the refrigerator in his office, and they found a yogurt in there. This is June 2019. The yogurt expired in November of 2017. So 18 months of yogurt. So I posted this photo that he had submitted to us to Reddit, to the WTF subreddit.
Yeah.
And that's just what it's called, WTF.
Yeah.
And I was like, put it on there. This yogurt expired on, this date, whatever. And I got a ton of downvotes. People saying, that's not a WTF. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. But I also couldn't find any other subs to put it on. It was super weird. So I forgot, we had gotten an email from Scotty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scotty C.
Did you want to mention our new listener in Florida? Was it Florida?
Oh, yeah, we do. We got a couple of messages sent to us from, we'll call him the crazy Irishman from Florida. Strangely enough, he's from Florida, but he doesn't live in Florida. He actually is residing currently in Kentucky, but was mentioning that he's been binging the show. And as far as I know, he's the only person that we've been notified of that's been binging the show. People that listen usually listen to, episodes as they come out. He's kind of catching up after the fact, I guess. He got, caught the train a little bit late, but he's been binging the show and thought he'd let us know that he's binging the show. Well, thank you very much, Crazy Irishman from Florida. We appreciate the info. I should have written that on the board. I'm surprised that I'm a little, off kilter this morning. I got to work at 3:30.
That's a little early.
It was way early for me. Just couldn't sleep last night. It was really hot in the house. I fell asleep for a couple hours, and when I finally woke up, I woke up at about probably 1:30. Just couldn't fall back asleep.
Do you have a fan on in your room? Well, we don't live in Japan. You should be safe.
Yes. I have a fan. I have a ceiling fan. We actually have a...
But you have like 20-foot ceilings, though.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. We do have a portable air conditioner that I got out of storage yesterday. Plugged it in, darn thing wouldn't turn on. So I think the fuse for the circuit board is blown. So I have to take it apart today and see if that's what the case is.
Good luck.
Thank you. Hopefully I can get it fixed so I can sleep tonight. Oh, and not to mention the fact that we're painting in the house.
Oh.
So
are you using the no VOC paint?
No, heck no. I want all those fumes just coursing through my residence. My kids are gone for a week at stay camp, so it's fun. It's just my wife and I at the house. Yeah, we're painting, and so I was up kind of late.
Yeah.
Rushing around, getting stuff ready, because my wife was going to be painting during the day today. So I kind of had to get stuff together, and I guess I was just kind of frazzled and didn't fall asleep right away, and when I finally did, I just didn't stay asleep. Anyway, onward. We actually have a topic for the day.
Yes.
The topic is, Jason?
Guns and arrows.
Guns and arrows? Guns versus bows and arrows, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not just guns and arrows. I'm sure there are guns that shoot arrows, but...
There's probably a magazine called that.
We'll have to look. I have to look if there's a magazine called Guns and Arrows. So you had mentioned to me, this was actually a couple weeks ago, you had mentioned to me about doing an episode specifically on...
Guns and arrows.
Guns versus bows and arrows, why we transitioned from the bow and arrow to firearms.
At the rate that we did, or at the time that we did.
Well, what time do you think that happened?
I don't know.
Did you prepare at all for this?
Not a whole lot. That was you. That's why I told you to be prepared for it. I just have some thoughts on it.
Okay.
You're going to be our facts guy.
Okay. Well, what are your thoughts?
So when did guns start?
Well, guns have been around firearms have been around for a while. I mean, there's anecdotal evidence, I guess, of firearms being used back into like the 10th century.
Okay.
But not necessarily for warfare. I don't think it was
shooting fireworks and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think it was really until like the 1300s, 1400s when firearms really started to be utilized in warfare.
Yeah.
Surprisingly enough, it seemed to happen faster and more in Europe than it did in Asia. Considering that's where they were really developed in East Asia, China specifically is where firearms are really the basement or the grandfather of all firearms kind of was developed there. It was really because that's where they had a ton of gunpowder. They just knew how to make it and utilize it. So that's kind of where it started. But they just didn't see it as a practical weapon of warfare, whereas Europeans did.
Yeah. So
Europeans made the transition from bows or crossbows to firearms much faster, and they did it they started doing it, I guess, around 1400 or so. Okay. 1300.
But I imagine the Europeans, they still used crossbows, things like that.
Oh, they did.
They had like I don't know how the Europeans did their battle, because like the Romans, they had like the phalanx where they would march up and spears and archers that would shoot all their arrows at the. But I don't know how the Northern Europeans did it. They just kind of went. They had the berserkers and the Vikings and stuff.
Well, that was different. The Vikings was an entirely different. They were raiding parties. They didn't have like giant armies where they would, invade a country. They literally had like shore raiding parties. They would only go so far inland usually.
Right. What about like King Arthur? So like he had his knights, and that was later. That was in the that was after the Roman period, and then they used to go on military campaigns.
Well,
parades.
Just like anything else, everything is basically a necessity. Yeah. Inventions are usually invented because you need them for something.
Right.
Well, just as, bow technology was, it's been around for millennia. Obviously, It's been used for thousands of years. It got to a point where the armor started catching up with the ability of the bow. And this is why I think that the Europeans picked up on the firearms faster, is because European bows weren't as good as bows that were made in like East Asia. So in China, the bows were very good.
Right.
So they were able to kind of keep up with the armor technology just as fast. Whereas the European ones kind of weren't. So they kind of needed something else. So really it came down to a couple of factors, I think. It came down to power, for one. It came down to time. The time factor was kind of strange because you had instance where being any good with a bow takes time. It takes a lot of practice. It takes years of practice. Think about those people you've seen.
Years.
Think about those people you've seen who, if you've ever seen like a horse show or something, somebody firing a bow while riding a horse,
Well, no, that's different.
No, what I'm saying is to be to be useful in war where people are running around, you're on horseback riding around or whatever, it's a lot of practice. It takes years to master that skill.
Yeah.
Whereas to master the use of a firearm doesn't take very long.
Yeah.
You can get pretty good at using a firearm effectively very quickly. And also, I guess that would be called the person who makes an arrow. I think it's called Fletcher.
Got me.
I think it's called the Fletcher. It's fletching. I think that's what they're called. It's Fletchers. Was actually a skilled job.
Yeah.
So you had to be good in order to make the arrows, for the army. Well, if the army is going out and they need, 10,000 arrows, well, it's going to take a Fletcher an awful long time to make that many. You'd have to have many, but you don't have to be very skilled to make musket balls for a smoothbore weapon. I mean, it's just you're pouring metal into a mold and that's it. That's all you do. So I think it was a time factor. So you had a lower learning curve and you had a ability to rearm yourself quicker than if you had to use a bow and an arrow.
All right, maybe I'll just explain my issue.
Okay.
All right, so let's say you have an army, 2 armies are going into battle, and one has bows and arrows, and the other one has, let's just say, Civil War era weapons.
Those are actually really good.
So,
compared to Revolutionary War muskets.
All right, well, let's go with those ones.
Okay.
How's that? Well, it doesn't even matter because of what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But anyways, all right, so you've got the people with the guns.
Okay.
Right? When you go to load your gun, you got to take out your little packet of gunpowder, that paper pill thing, rip open the top, pour that in there, pull your stick out, jam it down in the hole.
It's called a ramrod.
Okay,
it's not a stick.
So they pull that back out. Then they throw their projectile down in there. Then they aim. And then they say, well, don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. Because their aim is so bad. Because it can only go so far. Right? So then they shoot.
It's not just the fact that their aim was bad. It's the fact that you're talking about a smooth bore musket.
Yeah, it's just not going to go where you're pointing.
No, it's like a knuckleball. It's gonna move all over on its own.
Right. So how far away is whites their eyes? I mean, it's not that far. 40 feet?
Well, the effective range of early firearms wasn't far.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, we're talking 90 meters or so.
Okay.
So less than 100 yards, less than 100 meters.
Yeah.
Whereas the effectiveness of a bow and an arrow was something along the order of 350 meters.
Right. All right. So there's one thing. So you're going too far here.
Okay.
So the first thing is they can't, the range is one thing. So they're already going to shoot an arrow at you before you can hit them with the bullet, the projectile. Let's not call it a bullet because it wasn't really a bullet yet. Right?
We'll just call it a projectile. That's probably the more apropos term anyway.
All right. So now you have to wait till they get closer, and they're already shooting a bunch of arrows at you. Let's say you have your gun ready. You shoot once. Now you got to go through the whole process, right? And here's a guy running at you with bows and arrows, and they're already shooting at you from behind. Now you got to go and reload, rip the paper off, stick it in there, ramrod, projectile, get back in position and fire. That's a lot of time. Unless they're lazy battlers and they're just strolling down the battlefield.
A musket is, I think, the rate of fire of a really good musketeer.
Yeah.
Is 3 rounds per minute.
Yeah. How long do you think it takes you to run 100 yards? It's not a minute.
Better not be. You're
Especially
in a lot of trouble.
So you fire once, you're probably going to miss half the people, and then here comes a guy running at you with a spear or an axe.
Well, you also got to remember that during this whole transition period, I'll use the term shock and awe. A firearm was a shock and awe weapon because some of the benefits you have with a bow or a crossbow,
right?
They're silent. However, the arrows move really slow compared to a musket ball. I mean, you're talking musket ball velocity, 1,000 feet per second or whatever, whereas a arrow, not even close to that.
I don't think I could dodge an arrow still, though.
Well, think about it this way.
I could put a shield up.
Think about it this way.
Yeah.
If I'm 100 meters from you with my bow, trying to shoot you, I'm not aiming directly at you.
Right. I
can't.
Well, you could.
No.
What do you mean, no?
I can't.
Why not?
Because the arrow is going to start falling. It follows a ballistic trajectory, just like a mortar round would.
You still aim it.
You do aim it, but you don't aim it like directly at the person. You have to aim, you have to count for windage and you have to count for distance and all this other kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay. So just like when you're making a long rifle shot, you got to account for that. So
Yes.
the bullet drops just like the arrow is going to drop, and the arrow drops faster, right?
Okay.
So
Go with you there. So you have to arc
so
it more.
you have to arc it a lot more.
Yes.
And in a situation where you have like front lines of people,
Yeah.
archers were like good as gold. So they were protected by general infantry.
Yeah, they're way back there.
Yeah, they're way in the back. So, of course, when they go to launch their arrows, they're way in the back. They got to shoot them way up in the air.
Yeah.
You're going to know they're coming.
Well, that's true.
You'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see a barrage of arrows coming. And you'll be able to hide because you'll have 5 seconds before they get to you or however long it's going to be. It's not a short time. I mean, it's short, but it's
Right.
long enough for you to move out of the way.
You can hear it coming and
You
put
can
your
see
shield
it
up.
coming. Yeah.
If you're carrying a shield.
But a
The
firearm...
gun guys don't carry shields.
No, they don't.
Right.
But you also got to think, okay, what armor did they have?
Yeah, but whatever armor you're protecting against an arrow, I'm guessing it would be just as good against the early bullets, early
No.
projectiles.
Chainmail would stop an arrow, whereas chainmail probably wouldn't stop a bullet.
It'd slow
I mean-
down quite a bit.
Yeah, it might slow it down, but I'd rather the bullet just go straight through. I mean, if it's going to slow it down and take chunks of the chainmail with it, now I'm totally hosed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't think everybody had chainmail. It's probably just the wealthy people.
Okay, now we're getting it. We're getting
You're getting
so
off topic.
we're getting sort of off topic because there's a lot of factors involved, a lot of which have to do with things other than the weaponry themselves.
Yeah,
Armor is a big one. Tactics are a big one.
yeah. All right, so let's just say, all right, you had a gun and a bow and arrow guy. Let's go back to that. Right, and you're just fighting each other.
I think we ought to do it a little. Think about it this way.
Yeah.
There's an apocalypse.
Yeah?
Apocalypse happens, and it's
Today or back then?
today.
Well,
So we're talking, Walking Dead territory.
Yeah, that's different, though. Let's get into that.
What weapon would you rather have? A bow and arrow or a firearm?
It depends.
Why? Why does it depend?
Am I an experienced, like, where am I getting this bow and arrow? And where am I getting the gun? Do I own both of them?
Sure, you get a compound bow from a sporting goods store, and you have
Have I
a.
been using them for a while?
Sure, you know how to use a bow.
Probably pick the bow and arrow.
Why would you pick the bow and arrow?
Well, that just seems cooler.
Like
Anyways,
Daryl from The Walking Dead, your crossbow.
So if you're back in the olden times, no TV. If you're an arrow guy, I imagine you practice shooting the arrows. Like there's videos on YouTube of guys who can shoot like the arrow through like a donut swinging at 100 yards away or something ridiculous, right? But if you don't have a TV and you're just an arrow guy, I imagine you get pretty good at it. You can be pretty quick.
You can be, yes, but it takes a long time and a lot of practice to be that good.
But they don't have anything else to do. If you're the
Now that's right, because hunting and
if-
gathering aren't something you have to
hunting
do to
wouldn't be
survive.
a difficult thing because you're the arrow guy.
Yes,
the
but
archer.
when you go hunting, you don't just go out in the woods and start randomly shooting arrows all over. You have to wait for something to come along, or you're going to scare
Yeah.
all the prey away.
But in your other free time, imagine they practice shooting arrows a lot. I imagine they could get pretty good with their aim and pretty quick.
This is where it also gets sort of off track a little bit, because now you got to think about, when did armies become professional?
Well, yeah.
If you're a professional soldier, you have time to practice. If you're not a professional soldier, which mostly you were not,
Yeah.
that was very rare.
Yeah, but then even if you have a non-professional soldier with a gun, he's still going to take longer to get his powder in. And
Even if it slows down to 2 shots a second, I'd rather have a firearm in a bow fight.
But an old gun, one that just doesn't have good aim, you would still choose the gun?
Probably. It's more power.
So if you have, like, let's say 50 guys against 50 gun wielding
50
guys,
bowmen and 50 gunmen.
Yeah.
50 musketeers, we'll call
And
them.
think of a standard battle, like Confederate War battle.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got all your gunfire, gun toters.
Did you say Confederate war battle?
Yeah.
I mean,
From the Civil War.
why don't you just say Revolutionary War battle? That's
'Cause I'm
probably...
not as familiar with that one.
Okay.
And I'm giving you the benefit of the newer guns.
Okay.
Bad advances. All right.
Okay.
So the way I understand is, like, they would line up all their guys. I guess it's the same thing. I guess the British did it this way too. They would line up all their, I don't know, what's a person who carries a gun? A gunfighter, I guess.
It would just be infantry. It would just be called infantry people back then.
To distinguish them from the archers, the gun guys. So you line those all up, and they're already loaded with already preloaded, right? And they fire their weapons, and then they got the second line behind them. And as the first line is reloading, the second line shoots.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it takes like at least 30 seconds to load a weapon, I would think.
No.
Not 30
If
seconds.
you can shoot 3 rounds a minute,
Right,
especially
20
professional
seconds.
soldiers, are 20 seconds.
Right,
It takes
20
20 seconds. Yeah.
Professional ones. Right.
Yeah.
So then 20 seconds, 20 seconds. You got 20 seconds of nothing, right?
I guess if you want to go that route, yeah.
Right. But then you got the arrow guys. Imagine it to reload a arrow. I'm guessing that I can only imagine like what you see on TV. They've got the thing on their back.
Quiver.
Yeah. And they're just pulling them out and just stick them in the bow and just firing it again. I mean, it seems like 10 seconds.
It's probably less than that.
Yeah, that's a lazy 10-second guy.
Okay, but now you got to think, how many arrows do they carry? What, do they got like
a lot.
50 pounds of arrows on their back? No.
Why not? They got to carry all those bullets.
This comes back to the whole issue with the Fletcher, the person who makes the arrows. So they were able to outfit every bowman and squire with 10 arrows each.
10 seems like a little small amount.
Maybe 20. Even if it's 30.
Yeah.
You're not going to last very long in a battle. 30 arrows?
Yeah. I don't know. I just pictured them having more.
A quiver with 180 arrows in it.
Maybe not that many, but I imagine they brought a cart with some extra arrows in it they would just refill on. If you're going to war, I would think you'd have extra ammo with you.
That's why different units did different things.
Yeah.
You had archers, you had regular infantry, you had cavalry. When at the advent of artillery pieces, so like mortars and things like that, which have actually been around for hundreds of years.
All right, so here's another question for you.
Yeah.
All right, take out cannons.
Take out cannons.
But then you take out the catapults and everything from the other side.
Okay, and there's no catapults, no cannons.
Cannon changes the game. I think cannons they completely change the
Again, a cannon is also a shock and awe weapon. Can you imagine being a soldier standing in a field and having a cannon being shot at you? You're in a world of hurt, and you'd probably run away.
Yeah,
especially if you'd never seen one.
So take out the cannon, take out catapults. The catapults are
okay. We'll take out the catapults. We haven't even mentioned catapults yet, so I guess they're totally off the table.
All right. So you have the Confederate Army on one side,
wielding their catapults.
No, the Union side with their guns.
Okay.
Right. And you're going to fight King Arthur's army, right? And they're going to go into battle. And this is in Confederate Army times.
Okay.
Right. Civil War times. Right. But I still think the King Arthur side is going to have the advantage.
Absolutely not.
You have guns. What else did they have? They didn't wear any armor.
Okay. Well,
right?
That's true.
They didn't really. The only hand-to-hand combat they had was the thing on the end of their gun.
The bayonet?
Yes.
The thing on the end of the gun.
The sharp end of the stick.
I guess you are not a gun person.
Or against them.
You call it a stick. You call it the thing at the end of the gun. Okay. During this,
I also don't know what the end of them.
Just listen. During Civil War period, is when firearms were making another transition.
Right before that time.
Okay, so firearms are making a transition from cartridges to actual having to use a ramrod. So you know what a cartridge is, right?
We're not going to cartridge because that changes the game again.
Okay, so we're still at muzzle loading. Muzzle loaders. Okay, talking about muzzle loaders. The muzzle loaders are still going to win.
Yeah, I don't know.
Their tactics are entirely different.
Was there more than just the kneel and fire?
Yeah.
What else did they do other than running with the bayonets? I guess they had horses too.
They did.
Yeah,
and the officers had pistols.
Yeah, but if I had a bayonet,
take out a lot of bowmen with a pistol
against the guy with like a spear, I don't think the bayonet guy is going to do as well. An experienced spear wielder against the bayonet guy.
An experienced bayonet guy.
Yeah, but the spear wielder has a longer range.
That doesn't mean anything. I mean, that's like watching football. The running backs are usually very compact compared to the linemen.
Yeah.
And why is that?
I don't know.
because they move faster. They can get through the holes. They can find the spaces.
Yeah.
Just because the people on the line in front of them are bigger does not mean that they're not tactically more important.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing. I mean, Civil War time, they had trenches. They had fortifications. Whereas in the times you're talking about, like medieval times,
right.
Fighting with swords and bows and arrows and axes and stuff, they didn't fight that way. They literally got into a field and just like marched towards each other and then just laid waste. They did siege places. I mean, but those were castles. That was kind of the whole point. That was not as common. So when they had like open engagements in like fields, like the honor of warfare or whatever, so they're fighting basically hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah. I don't know. Because if you look at like arrows today that you can buy and bows.
Yeah, we're not talking about arrows from today and bows from today.
I'm just making they've made quite a development period. And I would just think that like the Mongols, when they were riding with their horses and their giant arrows, their giant bows.
They actually didn't have giant bows. They had short bows.
Some of them had bigger bows.
Well, the Japanese had really long bows.
Yeah.
The Japanese used a long bow. Kind of like where the Europeans got that from.
Yeah.
But the Chinese and the Mongols would have used a much more compact bow that was actually just as powerful as the long bow was.
Okay.
But that's why why the Mongol hordes were as effective as they were, because they had these smaller bows that they could fire from horseback very quickly.
Okay. Good enough. So if you had them against like King Arthur's, I would think that they wouldn't have experienced archer army. So if you give everyone a bow, as much as arrow and bow technology has increased, and it must have been, I would expect that to be at its prime at the time that the guns started to take over, that it would be hard for guns to get a foothold in there. Most armies would be overrun by the more experienced archer armies. But apparently that wasn't the case, because we don't use archers now.
Well,
and then I agree that once like cartridges and faster firing and more accurate firing came in, that's not really a question. If you have, because there's a limit on how far you could shoot a bow, but that limit for a gun is much further.
Yes.
But during that transition time,
I mean, there are pros and cons for both.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you could go either way. I mean, there are still plenty of people who go hunting with a bow.
Yeah.
In the United States.
Right.
They could go out there with their rifles, but they don't.
Yeah.
And one of the real reasons, I guess, is, if you're sitting in a tree stand, I mean, granted, you have to wait for the deer if you're deer hunting. We'll use that as an example. Okay. If you're deer hunting, you're sitting in your tree stand for 5 hours completely still, and a deer comes up, and you're able to draw on the deer without the deer noticing. If you miss the deer with your arrow, by chance, the deer might not run away.
Yeah.
Because they didn't hear a loud boom that spooked them. They just heard the arrow hitting the ground.
Yeah.
And they may turn and look, but they may not run. But if you shoot at a deer with a gun and you miss, the deer's going to run away. The deer's going to take off really quickly.
Yeah.
So there's definitely benefits. There's stealth benefits to bows. And bows are really powerful. Have you ever fired a modern compound bow?
No.
It's actually quite cool.
Yeah.
They're really strong. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. A guy who is a friend of my wife and I actually wanted to open his own archery shop. He never ended up doing that. Yeah. Not yet, anyway. But I had never fired a modern bow. This is a couple years ago. And because I had a bow and arrow when I was a kid, but of course it was just a recurved, like, it was fiberglass bow. That we had. We just would shoot target practice at bales of hay and stuff just for fun. Yeah. But I never shot like a compound bow when I was a kid. We were over at their house, and he had his targets set up out back, and we were talking about shooting. I was like, I've never shot a compound bow. He's like, you haven't? I said, no. He said, come on. So he got out his really nice, like 80-pound draw compound bow and let me go out and take a few shots with it. And surprisingly, I was actually pretty accurate with it. I was sort of shocked by that. But they're really powerful, and I could see them being a very useful weapon. But if I had my choice, I'd pick something with a much higher velocity, something that I could hit a target with much further away. Yeah, like modern firearms, it's a hands down. But then you do come into that problem. Like again, if we go back to that scenario of the apocalypse, where are you gonna get your replenished ammo? you have to worry about keeping the gun clean.
Yeah.
You have to keep it really clean.
Right.
Or else it can well, that's not true. It can jam. It can actually explode. That does happen sometimes. And so those are kind of things you really have to think about if you come into that sort of situation. Would you rather have a bow or would you rather have a gun? I'd rather have a gun for the first few months when everybody had guns and ammunition, but when all the ammunition goes away and then you have to worry about trying to barter to get new ammunition from somebody, or you have to get somebody that's got like a reloading kit where you can reload ammunition you already have.
Yeah.
That's going to get few and far between really, really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, really fast. There's already an ammo shortage. That sounds really crazy to say that, but there totally is.
Right.
Like you go to a store to buy ammo for a rifle, or if you have like an M4 or something, if you're that kind of a gun nut where you have semi-automatic tactical weaponry, you can only buy a certain amount at a time anyway. But even if you were to buy as much as you could, there wouldn't be a lot there for you to get.
Right.
So it's already kind of in low supply for the public, for the military. Obviously, the military, they got ammo coming out their ears. But yeah, so I think in that sort of situation, I would rather have a bow after like 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
But a firearm until then.
Rabbit with a bow, you could just go pick up, or with an arrow, you could just
go pick up the arrow. Yeah. And you can kind of make arrows out of pretty much any.
Yeah, you can make.
I think over time you would get better at making them.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's no TV in the apocalypse.
Exactly. There's no TV in the apocalypse. And you're drinking water from our toilet tanks and hot water heaters, which we discussed in an episode. And now I can't remember which one that was. We talked about that exact thing.
But I guess if you were using it for self-protection during that time, if you see someone with a gun going up next to a guy with a giant compound bow.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a shotgun.
Yeah, but shotguns...
Their range isn't very far, right?
No.
So you could be further away with the arrow. You might have a good chance then. And then you can only get like 2 shots with a shotgun. If you're quick like the guy from Lord of the Rings with your arrow.
Legolas?
Yeah. You can get a good chance. So, here we go.
You're brain farting today, just like I usually do.
You have an army of Legolas guys.
Okay.
Because all they do is they just practice with arrows. Maybe not quite that good. Because he used to slide down the railings and shoot and stuff, all that crazy stuff. But if you could just fire at like half the rate that he would. None of that like 3 arrows at a time nonsense. Just
okay.
1 at a time. Against the Confederate army. I still think the arrow guys is going to win. The Legolas.
If we're talking about the Confederate Legolases?
Legolai.
I don't know. It depends.
I think I'd choose the army of Legolai.
To each his own.
Confederate army.
I guess. I mean, we could go back and forth all day.
Yeah.
You can walk down the street here with a bow and an arrow.
Let's say you were a thief and you broke into someone's house.
Yeah.
He's got a shotgun pointed at you or a giant compound bow. Which one would make you more nervous?
Oh, the shotgun.
Really?
Yeah. Shotgun sprays.
Yeah.
You don't even have to hit your target dead on for a shotgun to be effective.
Would you prefer
at close
to be
range.
Shot by a bullet or an arrow?
Where am I getting shot?
In the body.
Like in my torso?
Yeah, abdomen area.
I'd rather get shot by an arrow.
Really?
Yeah. It depends on what's on the head of the arrow.
It's a bad one.
I mean, is it poison tipped? Like you dip you dip it with a poison
it's not
dart?
Like the pencil tip. It's got some weird barbs on it. You can't just like pull it out. Like it's the old time.
It would have to go. You'd have to go all the way through to get it out. I'd still probably rather get shot with that. You have a much better chance of survival. Yeah, because if you get shot with a shotgun from close range, it's gonna leave
you're walking around with a stick.
But it's gonna leave a 2-foot hole. I mean, that's.
I suppose.
If I took it also depends on the gauge of the shotgun. You know how gauge works in a shotgun, right? The gauge is the size of the pellets.
Yeah, it's a small gauge.
Small isn't like the pellets are small, or small isn't like the
pellets are small.
That means
big gauge.
It's a large gauge, yeah, sort of like a 20 gauge or whatever.
Yeah, I
still wouldn't want to get shot with that because then you got many projectiles coming at you. If that's close range and it hits you, it's gonna kill you. You have a chance of surviving being struck by an arrow.
What about like a regular rifle, 22?
See,
I don't know what that is.
This is where it gets dangerous. Right. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because a 22 bullet isn't strong enough to go in one side and out the other.
Right,
It's not.
just gonna stay in there.
It's not a through and through, is what they would call that.
Okay, so that's the good comparison. You either have a bullet stuck in you or an arrow sticking out of you.
Well, the problem is the 22 round will go in,
Yeah.
and it's not powerful enough to go out the other side, but it's powerful enough to bounce around in there.
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes dangerous. Whereas the arrow is just going to go in and probably out the other side and just leave a hole in you. And if it doesn't hit your heart and it doesn't hit like a major artery, you'll survive. Yeah. Most likely. Whereas getting shot by a bullet, you never know. And it's not just with an arrow. An arrow is like you said, it's like a pencil injury. It's a puncture wound.
It's like
whereas a bullet is not a puncture wound. It is a puncture wound, but a bullet has so much kinetic energy. It actually has a shock wave around it. It damages so much tissue. Even in the area where it doesn't go in, it could still kill you without hitting anything vital directly.
This is too much detail now.
Hey, you asked for it.
Did.
Well, I think that's going to do it for today, Chaos fans. We appreciate you tuning in. We thank you for your patronage. Jason, you have anything else today?
Got nothing else.
All right, thank you, everybody, and we'll look forward to hearing some comments. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.